have always wondered where I want to live throughout the East and West Coast. Now that we are young adults, we want to know where we want to move. Today I want to contrast for you the geographical and economical differences of the East and West Coast. I will also be pointing out specifically the agricultural, weather, and economic differences on each side of the coast. Now that I've given you an overview, let's go into the differences into weather of each coast. So, in the West Coast, as we know, it's mostly sunny throughout the whole year. We do have our rainy days as well as it's pretty cold. Our temperatures for winter would be around 37 to 41 degrees. Some of the things we have here on the West Coast are beaches, mountains, deserts, and valleys. As for the East Coast, the weather can be diverse. They often have ice storms, floods, hurricanes, and major storms in the Atlantic Ocean. So pretty much natural disasters, sometimes having them to evacuate the area. In the East Coast, the landscapes are beaches, dunes, wetlands, grasslands, and what they are most known for, fisheries and marines. Not only does the weather differ in the East and West Coast, but also the agriculture. The West Coast grows fruit orchids, that would be apples, cherries, grapes. West Coast is also known for their wineries. We sell a lot of wine here because we have the grapevines. The East Coast has learned to harvest crops by the natives when they came to settle here from Europe. Their crops contain mostly corn, tomatoes, and were later taught how to catch lobsters, clams, and turkeys. Furthermore, differences also vary in economical between each coast. So, as we know, the West is known for major businesses, and that's how our economy is brought into the country, mostly by these brands, Apple, Google, Amazon, SpaceX, and Microsoft. As for the economy on the East, a fun fact, the economy in the West is equivalent the amount of combined between Indonesia, Switzerland, and Mexico, which is about 1.2 trillion. So what we make in the West Coast, the three other countries are barely making it. The West Coast is also known for international chains with China. The ports are in California, Washington, and Oregon. In the East Coast, they bring their money by the New York Stock Exchange. The biggest the big states that bring in the money is New York, Boston, and Washington, D.C. The East and West Coast have differences geographically and economically. Now, when the time is right, we know where we want to move because we would know the differences between the East and West Coast.
All right, Arturo, what did you think?
I think that the topic you picked was good in like explaining to the audience on what the differences between and the West Coast and the East Coast were, but she needs to as well project because she kind of stayed at a tone but not projecting her voice at full. I'm not sure if you were sick or anything, but That's what I found. Another issue that I saw was you tend to look at your note cards a bit too much, but at the same time you were presenting the statistics and what good your presentation was in doing and informing us about your presentation.
All right. Vanessa, your attention device needs to be a little bit more compelling. It's kind of like, well, I was wondering where I'm going to live, so that's why I decided to talk about this. And why anybody else would care about that, I'm not sure. You need to get some way to kind of hook us into this and care more about it. Maybe a brief description of the robust life that people live in one part of the country and the more sun-based lifestyle that they live in the other part of the country. That would help. Apparently the middle of the country doesn't even enter into your considerations. I'm not exactly sure why. All the center of the country is being excluded from your consideration, but you've got this division that you have set up, and that was pretty clear. I think that you did a good job identifying what your purpose was. I think, like I said, you need to give us a little bit more justification as to why this is the thing that you're focusing on. The preview is very basic. You indicate the things that you're going to talk about. The way it comes across, though, is it really does sound like one of those oral reports that you would do in elementary school when I'm having to report on different parts of the country, that kind of thing. And so it just, it sounds perfunctory, almost mechanical, like it's right out of an encyclopedia report talking about different pieces of information. Well, here on the East Coast they have X, Y, and Z, and on the West Coast we have Q, R, and S, and here on the East Coast we have this, and so it's not that it's bad information, it's probably good information, but you don't do much with it other than just tell us that it's there. There aren't big explanations about how that affects the way people live or what. I don't know, having looked at this, how this helps you make your decision. What do you care about, for instance? What matters to you? Even if we were just going to focus on your justification for talking about this subject, in the long run, I don't know what it is that you're going to use as a criteria for making this decision. Longevity, how much money you make, lack of bad weather, your job, whether or not you're going to drink a lot of wine, although I'm sure that they can drink all that California wine on the other side of the country. But, whether or not you want to see where it's produced, maybe that would matter. Otherwise, it's just like I said, it's information, and it needs a little bit more reason to be there for us. I didn't hear any sources being cited in the presentation, so that's problematic. Like I said, your audience needs to be engaged in this a little bit more. You need to give them a stake as to why this is something they should be talking about. Organizationally, it's pretty basic. It's topical in nature, and I can tell when you were moving from one point to the other. I did hear information in the presentation, very brief pieces of information about, for instance, the weather or the economy on both sides. I think some of that you could make a little bit more compelling. I mean, let's face it, the East Coast just went through hurricanes that were quite devastating. You could describe that sort of thing. On the West Coast here, we've been suffering from a drought for several years, and you don't make mention of that. And those would be things that I think would be important if you were going to make the comparison that you're talking about here. Arturo mentioned a couple things about delivery. There's a little bit more reading than you want to have, and maybe you need a little bit more variety in your voice. That's something that more practice would help. The speech is only 3 minutes and 40 seconds, so you have more than half of the time left. I think you could put a lot more into this presentation, make it a little bit more interesting, talk to us more about why you think these are the important things to look at when making this decision. And then I think the best way to maybe make it interesting to us is to talk about how you're processing it. When I looked at this, I thought, well, do I want to work on Wall Street, or do I want to work at a winery? Do I want to live someplace where I have to put on my cold weather gear every day, or would I rather be someplace where I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get a drink of water tomorrow? That kind of thing. Where do you see yourself? When it comes to those things. You're probably not going to be a farmer, so I doubt very much that you're going to be picking fruit or harvesting wheat, or and you don't look to me like the kind of person who wants to make a career out of lobster fishing, but maybe you are. I don't know, that kind of thing. So it's like you're talking about this stuff. The reason you're talking about it is because you're trying to make a choice. Give us that reason as a hook to keep us involved in that. All right, thank you.